and to this day, when we break the MBAs up into groups, and they're given tasks, and these are young women, between 25 and 35, young men, between 25 and 35, and the group is given a task, who takes the notes in the group?
The women.
Who organizes the times when the group will meet? Who fetches the lunch for the group? Invariably. Invariably. The women show up, the men don't show up. The women text, go crazy, finding the men. They might do it, they'll say Skype later. I would actually, from what I'm seeing, I'm actually very concerned about the younger women. Because, and again I'm generalizing, I think there is a sense among some of the women that actually the fight is over. Those old birds did it. Those bra-beating birds, whatever they were. We've had our women's wave. I know we've called it 1, 2, 3, but in my experience, when I go around to my various organizations, the young women are almost unaware of how much discrimination they're facing. They're in such denial and oblivious, and many of them have this rosy idea that it will all work out in the end. And I want to say to you, where I'm sitting here now, in my experience, I'm struggling to find, I was going to say any, but they can't be right. I'm struggling to find several exceptions of real, true gender participation. Not token, not play, real, true, genuine partnership. So I don't think that I've worked for a company or worked with a client that has a real equitable approach to the gender issue. And even if they play games at the senior management level, the men earn more, the men get away with more, like yesterday. You all wanted to kill off poor old Marcella and leave this stupid man in his job. They get away with more. The women are scapegoated more easily. So don't be alone, which is what I've been telling many of you. And I'm not trying to be totally bleak about it, but I am concerned about it. And I must say the statistics bear me up. They've gone down on every measure that you want to look at. Whether it's board, whether it's senior management, the recession, we're now rehiring the expensive men while the cheaper women did the 3 jobs. And we're still called the minority. Now I don't know, 51% is rather difficult to be a minority, but maybe there's a different measure. So I worry. And as long as we start emulating, as long as we don't find our own authentic leadership approach and stop trying to copy the old model, I think that's our only chance, is to do something different. Lisa.
Marianne was talking about school and running for office. I remember 26 years ago I ran for treasurer, and at the time lost out to a guy. But ironically, the president was a guy, the vice president was a guy, the treasurer was a guy, and guess what? The secretary was a female. But that was the only female out of the 4. 6 years later, and I ran and organized the 5-year reunion, the 10, the 15, the 20, and I just ran the 25th. Okay, where are the other officers? Now, what people don't realize, and if I could go back to high school or to tell the people, you should say to them, you're not just electing me for like today in class, but I'm your future leader that's going to be here to help you. I've just taken on the leadership role because I want to make sure our reunions happen. But I don't think people assume that. And they assume that the female will be the secretary that takes the notes, that does the thing. But, you know, something like a treasurer or a vice president or a president, well, those are male roles. And that's really wrong. And that has to change. And the only way we can get them to change is to go in the high schools and say to them, these people are going to represent you. Who do you want to represent you 20 years from now?
Yeah, the role models are absolutely, again, statistically demonstrated that we need to have more and more clear role models for young people to model after. I mean, I think about your women's resource group, and there are things that come to mind, you know, about these along the lines of secretaries and food being all about women. And that is to be sure that the group is modeled in such a way that it isn't everybody brings a potluck, you know, to have food, that it's modeled on any kind of professional group that exists in the corporation. So that if there's another professional group that needs, and they get catering and this, that, and the other thing, be sure that the women's resource group is modeled exactly the same, so it doesn't fall onto perpetuating some of those stereotypes, because for as many women love to bring food, there's also plenty of women who it's too much. They are already taking care of kids and, you know, family and daycare, and adding one more piece onto that, it's just like, really? You know. So I think we talk a lot about social change and how does social change happen, and there's been something recently in the media that it really resonated with me because I have college daughters, and that is this high rate of date rape and sexual assault on college campuses. And there's some lawsuits around that. I mean, it's a big issue, and it's a very difficult issue for people to talk about. A woman who is my age and an editor at Slate.com wrote a piece about this rate of sexual assault, and her piece was, you know what, girls, quit getting drunk. And it just was this flurry of, believe me, right? You know, media hype and everything else. But when I thought about it, when I read about it, I was trying to get my head around it, and I thought, you know, I'm a parent, and I've worked in this arena around violence against women, violence against youth, and, you know, how do you make social change, and what does it mean to make social change? And I thought, well, you know, the issue is social change is a different way of problem solving, and all of us are here to figure out how are we actually going to change something so that it's lasting and permanent. That's what social change is about, getting at the root cause. There are other ways to make change, but they may not be as effective and they may not work as long. And that's what I thought about this article. It is true that, you know, there are some girls that you can say, just don't get drunk and out of control and you're not going to get assaulted. And that is advice. But ultimately it's not social change because it doesn't change the vulnerable person. The girl out there who loses that moment of self-control and becomes the vulnerable person in society. And that vulnerable person in society exists at all levels, in all genders and age groups. It's not limited to gender, but that's a piece of it. And so if we think about social change as trying to change the arena for everyone, whether you're a super strong, independent, talented, smart, college-educated, trained person, or someone just starting out who is on the, you know, on the scale of things just a little bit less personally capable. That's what social change is about. That's what our mission is, and our positions at work, and, you know, where we are in the world, is to make change happen for everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their gender, class, race, whatever it is. And so when we're trying to address change, that woman's advice would work for a certain group of people. But it's not going to make that long-term change that we need to have happen on college campuses. So it takes deeper thinking. deeper commitment to the problem. And that's what I think Annabel tries to get from her classes and people who participate with Annabel, is to go that deeper level, to think about, personal change, individual change, but change for everybody, not just the capable, not just the ones who have an opportunity, but those who have none. And yet, if they were given some opportunity or rules.
And I think we're all saying the same thing, that it's been disappointing that there hasn't been more change over the last 40, 50 years. When you think of the Civil Rights Act, it was 64.
Well, there hasn't been the adaptive change. There's been the technical change. We do different things. Oh, different.
Right.
And that's what Marianne's after. When we ask the young girl to stop drinking, we're asking her to do the technical work according to what we talked about, right? But what we're really looking at is how can we change the psyche, the consciousness, the social consciousness of our world. And that means, as Gloria Steinem says, once you discriminate against one, you discriminate against all. So it's not just discrimination against gender, it's against anything that is not, it's abuse whoever you can if you have more power. Isn't that right? So it's not women, it'll be blacks, or it'll be people of color, or it'll be disabled people, or, that isn't.
What about this new question?
Sure.
So, do we women though still contribute to these issues? So I'm going to tell a story because I found it interesting when it happened. And I'm not going to use any names because some of you will probably figure out who I'm talking about. So, but it does come down to, because I think we women then, once we get into a powerful position, tend to fall back onto the man in a sense, right? So in our organization, we have an opening for a senior director VP in a position, a high-level position. And I actually recommended somebody. She was a woman. She's been the best mentor I ever had. I worked for her before. She, very well educated, has an incredible resume of being VP, senior VP, CEO. Brought her into it because I thought she would just bring a lot of value to the organization. And her resume was just phenomenal. She didn't get past one interview with the hiring general manager. And then a few weeks later, a man got the position, 15 years younger than her, had no experience for this role, but he was a man in the inner circle, kind of. And it was really disappointing to see a woman hire a man less qualified for a position when she had a very qualified woman for that role. But she didn't see that. And I was really shocked by that. It was really, really disappointing. And that doesn't mean it's not working out, but I can tell you for sure that this woman would have brought a lot to this organization. It was just, I get so upset by it, because how are we ever going to move forward if we do it to ourselves? Mm-hmm. This person is surrounded by men, and she is the only woman in the organization, but yet she hasn't brought any women into the organization.
Madeline Albright said something about that, didn't she? There's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women.
And I'm not saying just do it for gender. I'm saying don't look at, do it for pick the right person. Don't even look at the gender, because it was just astounding to me. And I may have been biased, but to not even get past one interview and take this person to other senior leadership to interview, and then just out of the blue bring somebody else in who, I like this person. And he even said, I can do that, I'll just do that job. You want me to do that job? Because they were trying to fill it. She's like, sure, go ahead, you do it. But the woman had to go through an interview process. The man, who had no experience in the role, was given the role.
I think all of us now that you've had this class with Annabel, are enlightened. I mean, I think every man isn't going to be a great guy and every woman isn't going to be a great woman. You know, every woman isn't going to see her role in that leadership. But those of us who are enlightened, it behooves us even more to take on that role. A couple of stories. One is when I was in college, we had a men's crew team and a girls' crew team. I didn't really think about it. And then one day this young woman on my team came, and we had one coach for both because it was a poor school for sports. And he goes, okay, men, get in the boats, girls, get in your boats. And it never occurred to me what he was saying because I was so used to it. And she lit into him like I can't even tell you one day. And she just gave it to him. How dare you call it a men's boat and a girl's boat? And he was shocked, you know? And I'll never forget it because I thought of myself as a feminist, but I just wasn't aware. And I was so grateful for her for standing up, you know? And I wouldn't have done that. And so I think it's really important for all of us to recognize that, you know, when you see something, we are standing up for other people. Even other people who are like-minded, but in that moment don't really get it. And there's always going to be that woman who doesn't get it. And so it puts an even greater burden on us who do get it as we rise up through leadership positions, as we think about things, as we forget that we have sort of unarticulated and assumed bias. You know, we think the guy is going to not go home, not going to take a leave of absence to have a baby, but the woman will. So we're going to hire the guy over the woman. But maybe this woman's never going to have kids. Maybe this guy is going to quit in 2 years. You know, there are a lot of assumptions we bring to the table that we forget we have. And so if we can be enlightened about it, it's
And I think there's sometimes when we repeat things. You know, women are catty. I actually interviewed a woman one time who said to me during the interview, she must have had an out-of-body experience during the interview or something, because she looked at me and she said, you know, I don't like working for women. I would prefer not to work for a woman. And I'm thinking,
who am I?
did you forget where you were? You know, and then she caught herself and went, well, I mean, you know, well, no, you said it. And when I hear the generalizations that people make, well, women are this, or women gossip, and I think, you know, say something, speak up when you hear that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of myth around there about the way women are.
I feel like as a woman, you feel like you can have some influence on that, right? And in that situation, maybe you feel like you can influence.
Oh, I mean, I tried to bring in a really good candidate.
Right, but what if you're in a completely male situation? Everybody, like at my level, is all men, and then above them, all men, right? And I don't feel like I can go to one and be like, you know, as a woman, you know, whatever, right? That's where I'm at, or I was.
But if you think about it, you can see why women have fallen off in senior leadership. Like, so if this person were to leave, most likely should be replaced with a man.
Yeah.
And now the man is surrounded by all men. And so now you see how, you know, and I'm wondering if that happens in other organizations. I don't know, it'd be an interesting study to do. Once women get power, are they hiring the men and just trying to be non-gender specific and just hire based on the skills and the experience that the people bring to the table? Are they really being fair? When I saw this happen, I was shocked because I was thinking it's probably happening in other places too.
It's important. I mean, there's a lot of research in these situations. Research backing up your opinion is very important. So to just go to the senior management and to say, you know, I'm uncomfortable because there's only men on here. They're not going to. They're going to go, so what? Big deal.
Right, yeah.
But if you can come to them and say, every single corporation that has 2 or more women on the board does better financially and economically than their counterpart in the same business industry that has no women, you can document that they will be a more effective leadership team and successful industry by incorporating at least 20 to 30% women. Then they might start listening. I mean, I think it's having the conversation in a different way.
Yeah, and it's not only a conversation about diversity, the genders. I
Right.
think when you look at a board, when you look at a senior team of an organization, when you look at a work team, the best thing you can do for the work team is get people with different backgrounds who, in a diverse group, older, younger, different minority status, gender,
Right.
you know, different educational experiences. If you are all thinking the same, what's the value?
And so, you know, in some cases it may be suggesting, let's have a diversity workshop. You know, not a gender workshop, not a, you know, or let's look at what we know about diversity and leadership and, you know, bring some new thinking to the table. But we're in a really big advantage right now because there's so much research that points to all of this, that can be documented over and over and over again, side by side industries. One has women at the top, one has none.
But do you think men, generalize, do you think that that's really a big influencer?
Well, I will say that the more I call men on the carpet about these issues, the more I learn that it was never intended. That in fact,
What was that?
the discrimination, and so they just, you know, men. There are some people in leadership who just don't think about certain aspects of things very broadly. But I found today, the difference today versus 30 years ago that I've seen is when I talk to somebody, and a man, and raise the issue around gender, in fact, they hadn't thought about it a lot of times. And they've heard the whine, they've heard, oh, we're not this, but nobody's actually sat down with them and said, here's a solution. So they've heard, and I went to a program recently, and the Commissioner of Labor, Jim Craig, said, I understand that New Hampshire is lacking diversity in state jobs, in high-level positions. And he said, I want some suggestions for how we can make change. And I thought, you know, that's more what I'm hearing now than I don't care.
And I went to a workshop, a conference a couple of weeks ago, the National Association of Corporate Directors. So this is a group of directors for, you know, some of the largest public companies in the country, and a topic, an often brought up topic of conversation was diversity and the need for diversity. So those conversations are happening, and people are getting it. People are getting it.
And I think
Can I just say something maybe for Carrie? You are looking to find a net amongst all of these men. My suggestion to you would be find some of the men that have teenage daughters and partner with them on an individual basis. Because in my experience, the men who have teenage daughters are waking up often to them when the daughters come home with stories. And I have found that to be the most empathic group for someone like in your position. And there have got to be a number of men there. If you're going to arrive with Marianne's research document to the 20 men in your group or above you, I'm not suggesting
no,
that.
it is nuanced, right?
That's when 5 of you are partnering, that's when you arrive with. But in the beginning, you want to create those strategic partnerships with 2 or 3 men who have teenage daughters who are beginning to face the girls' boat and the boys' boat. And I'm sure you will find some help there.
You know what I do with diversity workshops now? I say, I'm a woman, hire me. That's how I get my speaking engagements a lot of times, because I'm female. I figured, you know, I can't buck the system. I'll join it. You need to be able to pay me money? Tell them I'm a female. Go into your little diverse group, and then you can get the money from me.
It strikes me that what's changed is it isn't as blatant these days. It isn't as
I'd rather it be
spot.
blatant than
Exactly.
say it to my face. Then at least I can defend myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is the hard part, is it's completely not said, because as Connie
Because
knows,
then
if
they
you
get
say
sued.
it, it's against the law.
Right, you get
know,
sued.
You can't ask certain questions, you can't, my
It's not
daughter's going.
underground.
Right, it's underground.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
it's the personal bias, which is, I'm not gonna hire this woman because she's gonna work 2 years and then quit to have babies, so I'm gonna hire this 25-year-old man because he's not gonna quit to have babies. But it's not a reality.
In interviews, so it's driving me crazy. We just hired, I moved on to a different position, we hired somebody to replace me, the director of finance, asked her, oh, you have small-handed children, are you gonna be able to do this job?
It's illegal.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But it's
Well,
not
1-800 sue the
No, it's
company.
my daughter's going through job interviews right now, and I said, people try to catch you off guard, and they'll say something, and I said, one of the things they'll say to you is, did you drive down today? I said, don't answer that question, because they're trying to ferret out, do you own a car? Are you going to be able to get to your job? I said, these are not, they know it's illegal, so they work around the edges. They sometimes those people who hold certain biases to find out that information.
I actually think it's gotten better in a sense for men, because in this diverse world, if they have young children, look at the man who wants to come in late, he has to take his baby to the doctor.
How
Well, I have to
sweet.
leave early.
that happens all the
Well, that's
time.
okay. We're very diverse, but if the woman still has to leave early to take the baby to the doctor, well, now she can't do her job. And as a female manager, I manage all my employees the same way. I understand your family situation. That doesn't mean we, the women, pick up your work. It's the same thing for the women. We're all going to do our jobs, and you're going to manage your personal life, and we're going to try and work together on that. But that's how I do it. But I still see that. What's amazing is that the men actually benefited from a lot of the work that we have done to bring diversity and equal opportunity. And that's shocking. And then as a manager, I get a little pushback because they make me feel like I'm not being fair. I have to come home and pick up the baby at the daycare. Well, I'm like, I understand that. But, this is your job. These are working hard. And we're going to work together. You can go home early. But it got to the point where I can't travel, so you, the women, are going to have to do all the traveling for me. Well, no woman could get away with that by saying that. And so I worked with that situation, and we came to an agreement, and we balanced everything. But I'm not going to treat anybody differently. We're going to work together. But I just get, I'm still amazed by when I see the women will get reprimanded in a sense and looked at like they can't do their job, but now it's okay for the men to take care of the babies and leave early. I don't know if I'm the only one seeing it.
No.
Oh, okay, good. And that to me is even more frustrating.
I think the best thing that we can all do as individuals is go back and make the ripples from your own circle make a difference.
That's what I'm
Speak
trying
up. Don't accept. Do what you can to treat people on your staff equally. And don't volunteer to bring in the crock pot with the chili. Let the guys do it. Don't volunteer. Sit on your hands. Don't volunteer to bring the brownies. Don't volunteer. Don't volunteer.
Enjoy that, though.
I like the brownies here.
I did.
You didn't raise your hand to do it, though. You took it upon yourself.
Don't volunteer to take the notes at a meeting. Assign somebody. Point to a guy in the room and say, you're taking the notes today. Seriously.
But you see, here's what happens. Here's what happens.
Rewrite the notes.
The guy, here's what happens. So,
He does about
Johnny Two Feathers
Yeah.
takes the notes.
Yeah.
They are short, badly written, miss some main points. So Susie Snitzpoop says, those are terrible notes. We can't possibly let those notes go out. Spends 2 hours fixing the notes. So the next time what happens at the meeting, there's no point giving it to anybody else because Susie's the only one who knows how to take notes.
Yeah. Bad.
It doesn't happen in small organizations as often, I don't think.
It happens a lot.
It happens at home.
Yes.
Happens
And
at
nobody's
home.
at home.
That's
a job washing the
That's
dishes.
the business version of why men usually don't do the laundry,
Right,
because our sweaters come out.
right,
And once that happens, you don't ask again,
right.
and then
They
you
do it
take
on
it on.
purpose.
That's
Exactly.
what your underwear in.
They do it badly. It does happen, I mean, that example happens also in an all-women's group. I mean,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
it isn't unique to, it's also.
No, I was talking about the, you know, if it was a bunch of men, they would just say, oh, pretty crappy notes. Oh, well, we won't let John do it again, we'll let somebody. But we will take it and, oh, do you know I had to stay till 7 o'clock last night fixing John's notes? Or Susan's notes, or somebody's note. That's us, right? That's where we sweat the
But
small
when the notes
stuff.
get published, the guy gets the credit.
Well,
So
that's
don't do it.
That's right, 'cause last night I was asked to send all this information I have, because the guy needs to prepare a slide for senior staff. So he's like, look, I know that really this is all your work, I know that, and I'll make sure you get credit. I'm like, of course, I wanted to say, no, you won't. But he's taking all of my work and going to present it, and who knows about getting credit for that.
Well,
But
you
I
better
did
follow
CC
up.
I did CC my boss, and I did CC others. And it was just, that's the kind of stuff that, it's like, if you needed this information, you should have, senior staff should have come to me. And in fact, one person said, well, why don't we just have Elaine do it? Oh, no, this person will do it and get it to us. He can work with Elaine. But Elaine can't go out. Yeah, that's why I was a little offset yesterday.
Do you remember the
That
movie
is
9 to 5?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, I thought when I saw that movie, well, this will pass, you know. It's still a funny, relevant movie to this day.
Connie, how did Delta Dental evolve as 80% women?
I think we started that way. You know, a lot of the positions in an insurance company are the administrative, transactional positions. So I think it's always been mostly women. I do my best in working with the senior team to recruit women for our boards of directors, because I think that's really important. And, you know, we have a good number of women in each of our boards. In terms of the senior team, we could use more women on the senior team. We used to have a CFO, Helen, who was a woman, and when she retired, she was replaced by a man. So the senior team, you know, VP of, all the VPs in the company except for me are men. But that hasn't always been the case, and I think if we had qualified, we do our best to recruit women for high-level positions. We have some really, our directors are women, so the top layer,
So
men, a
you're
lot of them have been around for a
sustaining-
long time. Pardon me?
You're sustaining a model that was in place and growing that model at the same proportion.
Well, the other thing is, if you look at our senior team, I was saying this earlier, that, you know, many of the people on our senior team have been there for a long time. So we have a senior VP who's been with the company for 35 years. There's been not a lot of movement on that level. Where I'm seeing the movement, we've always had predominantly women managers. Where I'm seeing the change is in the director level. And the directors are the next VPs for the company. So that's where I think that we're seeing the most change. Some really smart, competent women moving up the ranks.
All right, folks, we'll have
One more question.
We should more.
I was just going to follow up on the discussion about Delta Dental. I was curious if the movement that you're seeing as you're starting to see more women move up to the director role, if that's happening in both the line and staff positions.
So I'm not sure
Line meaning revenue management.
yeah. Cheryl, Lori, Director of Finance, a woman. And then Cheryl.
I report to Laurie.
Yep. Yep. So I think all over the company, yeah. But I think we have a very forward-thinking CEO, a very supportive CEO, And, I mean, Cheryl, you tell me, how about some of the women at the company who speak up? Janet, your thoughts? Marty?
Well, I guess I have to say that I've been in for 6 years, and I think that I've seen since then women moving into higher positions. You know, you talked about when Helen left and was replaced by a male, but then that male position was replaced by a female. So I think we are keeping balance.
And Courtney just moving up, I mean, that's a example right there. I mean,
Our actuary is a man, he's retiring at the end of the year. And he's been mentoring a woman straight out of college for a number of years, and she just passed her last exam and is a full-fledged FSA.
with twin babies. Yeah, well, with 3 kids, yeah.
3 kids.
Newly twin
Right,
babies.
just had twins and has another child, so she's doing the juggling.
Can be done.
She's a great role model. Courtney's a great role model. Jen Mullaney, another one. Lori Bienefeld, all strong, smart women helping mentor the next generation of people.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your insights. Any of you